56 days to go until Donald Trump raises his hand for the second time and swears to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. This is the warning. And in that instant, the military aides will transfer the nuclear launch codes to the military aide close to Donald Trump. He will once again be the world's most powerful person. He will, in many ways, be above the law. He is supreme. The checks and balances that restrain the executive in the American form of government have been nullified in large measure by the Supreme Court. They hold that Donald Trump has immunity to do as he wishes. And the great question is, what is it that he will do? Let's watch Bill Hagerty, the U.S. Senator from Tennessee. There was a moment in my lifetime, not just in America, but all over the world, that the U.S. Senate was recognized as the world's greatest deliberative body. Let's look at what the degeneracy has wrought.
I don't think the American public cares who does the background checks. What the American public cares about is to see the mandate that they voted in delivered upon.
Stephen Miller, the political extremist, who once again will hold a top White House job, will be charged with orchestrating what will be remembered as a humanitarian disaster and a human rights disaster when the government of the United States attempts to deport upwards of 15 to 20 million people. Now, let's be clear about something. The United States is a sovereign country with a border. What Donald Trump is talking about doing, we'll see. I suspect the American people will not like it very much. Let me show you the launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile. The Russian Federation, like the United States, has never launched one of these that have the capacity to carry nuclear weapons atop of them in combat. We did not use an ICBM in the Vietnam War, the Iraq War, and in Afghanistan. Neither did the Soviet Union. Neither has Russia, not in Chechnya, not in Georgia, but they used it in Ukraine. And soon, North Korean troops, think about this, North Korean troops will be in combat in Europe. Claire Belinsky of the Cosmopolitan Globalist, a superb Substack that focuses on international affairs, posits that World War III has already begun. History recalls the start of the Second World War as September 1st, 1939, with the commencement of the German invasion of Poland. The world that Donald Trump will become the most powerful man in 56 days from now is simmering like it once was. And in this dangerous hour, Donald Trump, who won the presidential election with 49% of the vote, has declared a mandate for sweeping changes across the country and around the world. With 49% of the vote, a grant of immunity from the Supreme Court, confidence that his campaign of racist antagonism, of division, of insanity, of race baiting, absolutely convinced that his campaign of racial antagonism, lies, insanities of all type worked perfectly. Donald Trump is going into office experienced with power, unafraid of its use, and hell-bent on revenge against his critics, against his enemies, against his opponents. Much of the American media will be fixated on this, while he smashes vital institutions at home and around the world that keep us safe. His instruments, his tools, are some of the most unfit people who have ever sat together in a room anywhere, let alone in a cabinet room. The United States Senate does have some power here. Will U.S. senators, will Republicans give power to Kristi Noem to be in charge of Homeland Security? Will the U.S. Senate allow a man with Christian nationalist tattoos stamped on his chest, who was disqualified from National Guard service because of it during Joe Biden's inauguration, to be the Secretary of Defense? He is unfit, unqualified, at an epic level to run a $1 trillion federal agency. More than that, he is unfit at a moral level to safeguard the tradition, the customs, the honor of the United States military. He lacks judgment, he lacks character, and he lacks the intellect, despite going to Princeton. And let me just say, for everybody watching, the Ivy League produces more than its fair share of complete and total f***ing morons like Pete Hegseth, who is unfit to run a petting zoo, unfit really to do anything besides bloviate on a Fox News morning set. He can't function in society. He went to a Republican women's event in Monterey, California, and groped multiple women and then is accused of raping one. His sense of entitlement, his taking what's not his arrogance is a cancer that will weaken the country. Pam Bondi is the replacement for Matt Gaetz, who's now on Cameo. Let's watch Matt Gaetz on Cameo. For $500, Matt, the defenestrated extremist congressman who slept with a 17-year-old girl before being nominated to be Attorney General of the United States, is now available to send anybody you wish for $500 a congratulatory 21st century telegram.
It's your favorite former Congressman, Matt Gaetz. I just wanted to thank you for being a longtime patriot, for supporting President Trump through thick and thin. And I know you were bummed out when the news broke that I wouldn't be the next Attorney General. We did get a great replacement in Pam Bondi. She's going to do an awesome job. You have nothing to worry about.
Sleeping with a 17-year-old girl is immoral. It's disgraceful. It's disgusting. It's illegal. It's unbecoming. It's awful. Matt Gaetz did it. And every one of the people around him that lecture at any moment they get someone somewhere about how they ought to live their lives decided they were okay with it. Let's watch the journey of Mark Wayne Mullen, the clownish senator from Oklahoma, denounce Matt Gaetz.
You got to think about this guy. This is a guy that the media didn't give a time of day to after he was accused of sleeping with an underage girl. And there's a reason why no one in the conference came and defended him, because we had all seen the videos he was showing on the House floor that all of us had walked away of the girls that he had slept with. He'd brag about how he would crush ED medicine and chase it with an energy drink so he could go all night. This is obviously before you got married.
Before being for him.
I think the president wants a hammer at the DOJ, and he sees Matt Gaetz as a hammer and all these other appointments. He's very confident in where they're at and can deliver the administration that he's wanting.
Before moving on to Pam Bondi, with whom we must talk because there's a problem. Pam Bondi is a registered foreign lobbyist, a registered foreign agent, not for the United Kingdom, not for Canada, not for Jamaica, no, not the Bahamas, no, not France, not Germany or Ireland, but Qatar, the home country, the host country of Hamas. The Attorney General of the United States cannot be, must not be, a registered agent, for example, of the Saudi government or the Qatari government or the Emirati government. Let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, legitimately, no joke, is a cult member. It's a yoga cult. Not making this up. The cult holds that the practice of their particular variety of yoga gives the practitioner the ability to see a truth that others cannot. And maybe that's how it is that Tulsi Gabbard went from a Democratic congresswoman in Hawaii to being the stooge of Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian murderer and war criminal. How she became a useful idiot for the Kremlin. Vladimir Lenin talked about what a useful idiot is. It's somebody who, for whatever reason, is dupable, who can be manipulated to repeat in their own way and in their own form and in their own countries the things that need to be said that in that era advanced global communism, advanced the interests of the Soviet Union. Useful idiot. The job is Director of National Intelligence, not vapidity. And the person who holds that job should not be on Fox News repeating Kremlin talking points they generated from who knows where.
Presidents Putin, Zelensky, and Biden. It's time to put geopolitics aside and embrace the spirit of aloha, respect, and love for the Ukrainian people by coming to an agreement that Ukraine will be a neutral country.
Putin has made very clear all along that their security, in his mind, is what's at stake here. It's not strategically possible to think that Ukraine is going to beat Russia.
The problem with Tulsi Gabbard is she is lost in the maze. This unfit, strange woman cannot be the Director of National Intelligence because she will make the world more dangerous, our country less safe, and she will get American patriots killed. And then, of course, there is Robert F. Kennedy. Who would have thought that some young person in medical school is going to get a chance to cure polio again? Because somehow RFK has figured out that the enormous obesity epidemic in America is driven by the sugar drink industry. And RFK has figured out that pharmaceutical advertising is really bad for you, for me, for everybody, and that it sustains the network news industry. He's also figured out that the pharmaceutical industry has 3,000 lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and they spend $300 million a year. And he wants to fight them. I think it's good. I think we should let them fight. So I would be deeply conflicted about the RFK nomination, because if it goes forward, you're going to see the greatest special interest political warfare ever, which will help in the end a reformed Democratic Party come back to life. And then the next Democratic president can appoint a Secretary of Health and Human Services and a Surgeon General and all the team they need to conquer polio again and smallpox. But maybe a dent will have been made in a $300 million lobbying industry that in part was responsible for killing 1 million Americans during the opioid crisis. Mostly, though, it's going to be terrible news, frightening news. The things that Donald Trump will say used to be the things that mattered to the media. Now, it will be the things he does. And what he says will be catching up to those things for the first time. And that's what's important to wrap your head around. Everything that Donald Trump has done when the biography of Donald Trump is written will have been but a short preface to the unwritten chapters that are coming. The body of what Donald Trump is going to be remembered for is not the damage he has already done, which will be regarded as a nothingness compared to the changes that are coming ahead. That for 2 years, there is no ability to stop except for in the courts of law, except for by building a coalition of fearful moderate Republicans who say, if I vote for this, I won't survive in 2 years, and holding the entirety of the Democratic Party together, which is going to be harder than it seems. There is an amazing scene depicted in The Ankler by the media reporter Lachlan Cartwright that details a meeting that takes place in NBC where Mark Lazarus, the new head of what is being called SpinCo, came to meet the staff and talk about what the future is at MSNBC. One of the correspondents asked a question about how will we function without the news gathering resources of NBC attached. And the answer to that question is you won't. That era is over. Those resources are gone and they will never come back. So functionally, there will be no news gathering at MSNBC. Not like there has been. There will be opinions if there is an MSNBC. Because here's the thing that nobody seems to comprehend, except the people on the right who are much more interested, it seems, in taking power and doing the things that are necessary to take it, including controlling and commanding all of the communication pipelines that deliver information. Those people may wind up owning MSNBC. There is no guarantee that it will remain a resistance. There's no guarantee that MSNBC will remain a progressive network. None at all. The reason that Comcast, and this is not being reported like it should in the American media, but the reason that Comcast sold and has put MSNBC on the market is not because MSNBC is not profitable. Quite the contrary. The reason is fear. Comcast is a $164 billion company. MSNBC is the tip of the end of the tail. It's 3% of the company. Would you risk 3% of your money for 97% return? Of course. Would you risk 97% of your money for a 3% return? No. And neither is Comcast. And so what we are witnessing is something that's hard to orient around, which is, for the first time since the 1950s, the corporate ownership of news networks is genuinely fearful of their government and its malice. And this is what needs to be opposed and stood up against. Running a newsroom is going to take grit and character and fortitude, because that is what will be required to cover the spectacular menagerie of depravity, of unfitness, incompetence, weirdness, strangeness, predatory behavior that is at the core, the living, breathing heart of the Trump cabinet. This is The Warning. I'm Steve Schmidt. This is The Warning, and I invite you to subscribe on our Substack, on our YouTube channel. Follow us. Welcome to the community.